Tell me about a time when you had to deal with an angry customer.
A certain customer came to collect their money. Unfortunately, we couldn't pay them just there and then, because they were issues with their check that needed the manager's attention. The manager wasn't around at that time, so they were asked to wait for the manager to return. For one reason or the other, they reacted negatively to that, and so I had to remain calm and allow them to express their emotions. Thereafter, I communicated with the manager and I was directed to pay them. After the payment was done, I apologized for making them wait, and they were very grateful for my patience and conduct in the end.
Tell me about a time when you had to work on a team.
There was a period when the company was experiencing very low sales. In an attempt to improve sales, we were given a sales target that was supposed to be met at the end of the month. And so, we had to sit down as a team, and discuss how that target was going to be met. So we came up with an idea of introducing a raffle draw, which was supposed to be done monthly, with money and other incentives as prizes, as we thought that would motivate a lot of customers to participate. The idea was implemented by management, and the results turned out to be positive.
Describe a time when you had to work under pressure.
There was a day when one of my colleagues fell ill, which means they had to knock off before time, and that in turn left us understaffed. I took responsibility for their duties, which means I had to multitask between two roles. As the day unfolded, we started experiencing network problems, and that resulted in customers queuing up. I had to explain the situation to customers, and ask them to be patient with us. As time went on, the queuing situation worsened. So I had to think of something just there and then to try and resolve the problem. So I collected all the tickets from customers, and asked the manager to directly check them in the system, so that I can just pay them manually, and validate them once connection was restored. The idea worked out perfectly, and by the end of the day, the queuing situation had normalized.
Describe a time when you had to deal with a complaint.
A certain customer filed a complaint about the time it was taking for them to be served. Apparently, we had network problems on that day, and so I had to explain the situation to them, and also assured them that I will do everything possible in my power to ensure they were served as quickly as possible. When the transaction was completed, I apologized for making them wait, and they were very grateful for my patience and conduct in the end.
When have you disagreed with your colleague?
There was a time when one of my colleagues were kind of misusing company time, and so, every time they were not around, I was required to cover them. Not that I am against doing that, but sometimes, some situations just get out of hand, and you are compelled to talk about issues. So we had to sit down and talk. They aired out their views, and so did I, and it turned out that the whole misunderstanding was as a result of miscommunication between the two of us, which we resolved, and emphasized on how important communication was going forward.
Tell me about a time when you made a difficult decision at work.
I was attending to a certain customer one day, and upon completing the transaction, I was supposed to give them change which they claimed was incorrect. I had to acknowledge it could have been my mistake, and that the money was going to reflect in the cash box if the change was really incorrect. On that basis, I asked them if I could count the money I had, which I did, and for sure, the money was balancing. However, they insisted the change was incorrect. So to resolve that misunderstanding, I decided to compromise, and give them what in their own opinion was supposed to be the correct amount. It was a loss on my part, but then I realized, not serving the customer to their satisfaction could have impacted the company in a negative way.
Tell me about a time when you achieved a goal set by yourself.
When I first started working for ABC Company, my goal was to get up and running as quickly as possible in my role. I thought that could have been easily achieved by shadowing someone who used to perform to a higher standard within the company. And so, I approached the manager for some recommendations, and I then reached out to the person in question to seek their help. Their guidance was very helpful, such that I was able to effectively and efficiently carry out my duties within a few weeks.
Tell me about a time when you maintained confidentiality at work.
A certain customer came to collect their money, and upon completing the transaction, I was asked not to disclose that information to anyone. Apparently, they had some debt they needed to settle, and so of course, the person they were owing secretly came to find out about the transaction. It was going to be irresponsible for me to disclose that information as I was asked not to. So I told the other person, I wasn't comfortable disclosing company and customer related information, more especially when I didn't have the permission to do so.
Tell me about a time when you showed flexibility at work.
I was supposed to be resting that day, and I remember receiving a call from the manager asking me to go and cover someone who had a funeral. I responded accordingly, and I remember we were just the three of us working on that day, which seemed a bit tricky, looking at how busy we anticipated the day to be. Nevertheless, we had to delegate responsibilities amongst ourselves, and at the end of the day, what we thought we couldn't achieve, we managed to achieve.
Describe a time when you showed transparency at work.
Normally, before starting to operate, the cashier is given a certain amount of money to begin with. There was this day when the money I was given was actually more than what was supposed to be in the cash box. I had to return the money to my supervisor, and upon doing that, I was told it was a mistake, and that he didn't even realize it. That happened for quite a number of times, and every time it did happen, I had to return the money. Eventually, I had to ask the manager the reason behind all those incidences. Apparently, he was just trying to find out if I was trustworthy, and if at all I can be trusted with money.
Tell me about a time when you received criticism.
There was a time when I was working on a certain project. Upon presenting it to my supervisor, I received negative feedback, and I was asked to revise my work. The feedback was very devastating at that time, however, after carefully listening to the critic, it helped me see which areas I could work on to improve the final product. So I worked on the areas that were pointed out, and my project was successful in the end.
Tell me about a time when you failed.
Way back in school, I remember failing one of the courses. The feeling was very devastating. No one likes failing, as you may all be aware. So to recover from that, the first thing I did was to identify and work on areas that were identified. We sat for our final exams, the results came out, and I cleared that course with a better grade. So failure is always bitter when it has just happened, but then it becomes a very beautiful experience once you learn and grow from it.